Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's ePay Blueforce Manual Timesheets webinar. Now, during our webinar, as we do with all of our webinars, we have everyone currently on mute. So when we do have everyone on mute, we ask you to use the questions area of the control panel and ask your question there, type it out, and I'll address it during the appropriate time in our conversation today. So as a reminder, we do these sessions on a weekly basis. We're trying to do these on a weekly basis going forward. Every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. with the same session on Tuesday, same session again on Thursday. And then we'll obviously record these and post them onto YouTube, and then I'll also put the documentation out on our ISS Gateway site, as well as another site called Google Drive, in which you can actually download those from anywhere and from over any internet connection. And the links are provided here in this presentation, which will be available after our session today. Now, for our Manual Timesheets webinar today, we'll be focusing on three key areas. Our three key areas will be first reviewing the payroll process. Just go through a quick review so everyone understands how payroll is kind of flows from Blueforce over into JD Edwards. We'll go through a little quick section on payroll readiness. And then after that, we're going to go through and discuss how you would handle payroll adjustments or anything kind of, like a back pay situation or missed pay situation. We'll go ahead and address those as well. So we have quite a few on our call, so let's get rolling. Our first piece we're going to go into, obviously. Actually, I want to start off with a quick question. And the question was the same question I posed to everyone in that ePay update is, are you producing error-free payrolls? And secondly, is your team consistently getting paid correctly and on time? So kind of the theme for today's session, we'll be focusing and answering these two questions. How can we create an error-free payroll? And more so, how can we guarantee that our team is being consistently getting paid? So we're going to go through a couple things before we go into the actual how to create a manual timesheet, because if we get these corrected uphand, we obviously will not need to do a manual timesheet if we get things right on the front end of it. So quickly, let's go over the Blueforce payroll process. And the payroll process here is essentially, as you know, all of our employees are currently going to be punching in via one of the time collection methods. And now those time collection methods will either be the Walter Decline time clock, the phone-in call-in system, the mobile punch, which is our mobile smart app on the smartphone, and then also the web punch option, which is a online clock in and clock out. So one of those four methods are the approved methods. Now, if the employees are religiously clocking in and out on these four methods, obviously your compliance scores are going to be fantastic. You're going to have any issues with a manual timesheet later. Also, supervisors and their managers, which is typically the editor or a submitter, is going to review the punches daily. And our requirement kind of from day one of ePay, since your office or your location was implemented with the ePay system, we've strongly suggested that you use a daily time review process. Obviously, daily time reviews affects your correction lag score that we talk about in your compliance metric. Now, the manager, which is typically the submitter, is going to review that time at the end of the pay week and then submit that time. Now, when you submit that time, not only does it lock out that time, not only does it prevent the employee from registering any more time in that time frame or any edits or any additions being made to that time frame, but that submit process also basically tells the next person, the approver, that you are done reviewing your payroll. Now, at that point, the admin or the administrative person or the manager or a different manager, who's typically the approver, is then going to review that time once more. I'm just going to do a once over and then click on approve. Now, as a refresher, the submitter and approver are there because we do a segregation of duties. So we don't want the same person kind of having total control. We want a two-tier step approval process here. So submitting and then approval. I always note here that the approving process is the point of no return. Once you click approve and once you've notified your corporate payroll contact, we kick off the export. And the export sends that information over to JD Edwards. So there's really not much time to retract any errors or any mistakes at that point. And this is typically the issue we have when it comes to manual timesheets, because now we submitted, we've approved just to go ahead and push it through, and then, oh crap, we forgot something. We forgot to add an employee, or this employee didn't clock in one day, we need to add his time, and by then it's too late. So corporate will then take over the exporting time to JDE, they'll process your payroll, and obviously ultimately fund your payroll, your paychecks, your pay cards, whatever it may be, direct deposits, and then we do it all over again the next pay period. Now, when I talk about the point of no return here, just keep in mind, submitters and approvers on this phone call, it's your responsibility to make sure that all the hours are accounted for. And I'm going to throw in editors into this group as well, because anybody who is a Blueforce user, anyone who's on this call right now, you need to make sure that your employees are actually getting clocking in and clocking out, and if they aren't, we have to make sure that their time is getting into the system. Once the approvers, as I said, once the approvers kick off that approval process and they hit approve, the export process for all technical purposes should begin. The corporate payroll will then prepare that exported time. They'll go in there and make sure that that export process does go effectively over from Blueforce into JDE payroll for processing. And then any time after that is missed, you can go back and just enter it into Blueforce. Once we pull over that time period into JD Edwards, essentially that pay period is done. So anything going forward has to be done in the form of a manual timesheet, which I'll review later in this call. So just real quick, Blueforce user expectations and our daily tasks. So as a Blueforce user, as part of anyone being on this phone call today, keep in mind that you are responsible for the daily review of time cards. And I cannot stress that enough. We are asking that a time card is reviewed within the next business day. Key fact there, key point there is the business day. We're not asking you to come in on a weekend to do a review of time. We're saying by the next business day that you do take care of your reviews. Punch approvals and corrections must be made, like I said, by the next business day. Typically, if it's done within the next 36 hours after an employee has punched in, that 36-hour range is that standard. It's based on the punch in. And that's what the correction lag is looking at. It's giving you that 24 to 36-hour period to actually get that review complete. So you can still get a 4.0 record, or 4.0 score for your compliance metric. Now your clock sites that are out there, if you have someone on site who's like a supervisor or a lead, we encourage you to get them involved in the system. Have them go, if they're at a Walter device site that only has a time clock, make them a reviewer role. If they are reviewers, they can go in there to the clock and make any adjustments. They can fix any invalid punches. They can go in there and fix any missed punches for you right off the clock. That'll save the submitter and approver some time later down the road. But bottom line, in all cases, whether you have a clock or you don't have a clock, the editors and submitters can actually go into Blueforce and actually do the reviews there. So there's always options, there's always ways of doing those daily reviews, but it's key to keep in mind that if daily reviews are occurring, and a lot of you on this phone call can attest to this, if you're doing your daily reviews, there should be no reason to have a manual timesheet created. So if we're keeping up and we're making sure that all of our employees are punching in and punching out, we're making sure that anyone who had an issue, an invalid punch, anybody who had an issue and did not clock in, where we're take care of their time and making sure their time is recorded in the system by the next business day, there should be no issues when it comes to the end of the pay period. So keep this in mind. No daily reviews are recurring, then obviously you're going to have issues. So just keep that in mind. So payroll readiness, and I threw this little section into my webinar today just to go through, because if we're making sure and capturing that there's no, we're doing those daily reviews on a daily basis, and we're making sure that everyone is being accounted for. When it comes to actually submitting your payroll, you should be ready to go. But I want to throw in 3 key areas when we do payroll. One of those 3 areas is going to be for all users on this phone call. 2 of them are going to be specifically at the approver level, but this gives you an opportunity to kind of go through and see some of the tools that are at your disposal, some things you can make sure that an employee doesn't get left behind. So how do you know if payroll is ready to go? Well, all submitters and approvers, and I'm going to throw in editors that little phrase here, have the tools that are required as part of the process of checking payroll. Now, if you're not doing these steps now, I strongly urge you that you get into the habit of doing so. First thing is timesheets. Your timesheets, you can sort all your timesheets by timesheet status. What that basically means is I can go into the timesheets to quickly see, and this is for any user on this phone call, I can see who's been submitted, who's been approved, and who is still in an open status. So you can actually go into the timesheet view, sort your views up a little bit, and actually tell which employees have been submitted and which ones have not. And this was a big step because right off the bat, for those that have not been submitted, and we proceed with the payroll process, those that have not been submitted are going to be left behind and will not get paid, meaning that that time will have to be re-entered later as a manual timesheet if you want to pay this employee. So timesheets is a way that everyone on this phone call can benefit. The other two is the payroll summary screen and the payroll register report, which both right now are for the approver role. Unfortunately, only the approvers can get to this step, and as their final check before they tell corporate payroll that they are done and that your area is ready to proceed with payroll, these two reports should be looked at. And actually, one of them is not a report. The first one is just a payroll summary screen. There you can go in and see all the employees and who's tagged as ready or not ready for payroll. And if they are tagged as not ready, that should be your signal right there that there is an issue with that particular employee. The payroll register report is also another one because that's going to display all employees and their current status by pay group. So you can quickly see who has been approved, who's been submitted. You can get all that information from one little report in the system. So it makes it also a good point to know how many hours and dollars and kind of expectations out of this payroll from that payroll register report. So it tells you a lot of information. So those last two there, the last two bullets, all approvers on this phone call, please make sure that you are doing these two steps before you tell corporate payroll that you are ready to proceed with the payroll process. So the first one is timesheets. And from the timesheet view, you can actually go in there and actually see some variety of different areas. The first area that I want to point out for everyone on this phone call is the show status of the time card. If you notice this first column here, you have a status of everybody, every job, and what status they are in. Now the beauty of this is you can actually go to the very top of the screen if at any point. You can actually click on that particular status column and it'll actually sort by status. But more so, I think the one that's very important here is really what's something that's not noted on my screen at all, and that's actually the timesheet status search drop down at the very top. This timesheet status little drop down allows us to change and look at only a certain status of timesheet. So if I wanted to go there right now and hit that drop down and select open as my status, then come over and click on search, the opportunity I have here is now the system's only going to show me those timesheets that are in open status, meaning the ones that have not been submitted and the ones that have not been approved. Now, if you are an approver in this phone call, it is good that you don't wait to the end of the payroll to do your approval duties. Start when you get in first thing Monday morning and go run this view for all open timesheets. And if there are anything that's open, get on the phone, get on the email, whatever you need to do, and notify your submitters and say, hey, you get started where we can't be waiting until the end of the pay period for you to submit your timesheets. So this way you can filter out and only look at those open status timesheets. That's one thing you can do to kind of assist you. Once again, if anything is still in open status, this is showing from a job level. That's letting you know that that particular job still has some open items. Now, if I actually were to drill down, and if I'm drilling down into the actual and opening up the actual timesheet for the job, so if I were to actually click on the link of the job name, it will actually give me the employee detail. And in the employee detail there, I can see if all my employees are still in open state, or if some of them are, or some are submitted and there's still one open. I can kind of see the detail from that, so I can see how big the issue is. So once again, that's the first thing I would start with is the status, making sure that everyone on this phone call is aware that you can see your statuses. Next thing is the open punches. If I ever see any open punches in that second column is letting me know that I do have some possible issues. So what that is telling you is open punches lets you know that those employees with open punches, those punches will not be recorded as part of the payroll process. So anything in this blue column that is circled is going to be an issue. So any open punches reflected there just letting you know that you have to intervene to get something corrected for those records. If you don't, that record stays behind, and unfortunately the employee does not get paid for that time. Then you have to answer the employee later as to figure out what happened. Also, you have the hours broken out by job or task. And now, some of you on this phone call would like to manage by this route because you can quickly see from a timesheet, yeah, 40 hours in a week at a custodian task is right on budget. That's right where I'm supposed to be. Looks good. Let's proceed. Or 170 hours for the total job is kind of where I need to be. So the total hours are broken out by job and task. You always have visibility to that to determine if that's something kind of where you're at. Now, obviously, if you're 100 hours off, don't just proceed with submitting and approving because there's obviously an issue. So from a glance, you can kind of use this timesheet view to your advantage as well. Now, in any case, these reports, this view can be exported. So if you're a submitter or approver, even an editor for that matter, and if you go in and you want to export this out, you can export the summary or export details. Export summary is going to give you the view that's currently on the main timesheet view screen. Export details will look at one specific job. So if I wanted to look up U.S. Airways hangar and I want all the detail behind that, when I click on export details, it'll actually give me the details behind all this, these jobs that are on this particular timesheet page. So payroll readiness, the first thing to look at is just making sure that everything is in order from a timesheet view perspective. So just a recap, first step for all submitters and approvers should always start here. So obviously when you're submitting, you're going to go to the timesheet view to submit your timesheet. If you're an approver, you can also go to the timesheet view to approve a timesheet. Now the first step from closing a payroll, obviously, you know, you can't get away without not processing a payroll without visiting this screen. Filter this job, filter this row by job, employees, or other filters. So when you actually go to the very top of the screen, you have the ability to filter out and only look at one job at a time, a specific employee, or use one of the other filters that's available at the top of the screen. Now, one thing, let me actually go back one page real fast so I can actually share one thing with you. Sorry. Let me go back here. One of the things that's not really noted, it's kind of hidden here, but it's called additional filters. In there are other filters you can filter out your timesheet data with, and if you haven't used it before, it might be a good idea just to click there and actually visit it a little bit. So just a side note there, additional filters just give you some other nice views that you can use to your advantage. Also, I mean, obviously you can show the status of the timesheet. So once again, if the timesheet is not in approved status, then obviously it's not going to get on to the next step, which is to now export that to corporate payroll. So approvers, make sure that when you go through here, it won't hurt you to filter that out to see all that's still open and everything that's submitted. Those are things that you would still have to do to make sure that those are complete before you call corporate payroll and tell them you're ready to go. Open punches, make sure there's no open punches on any of your lines. Also make sure the hours show a total by job or task. So you can actually go through there and break out your hours. And like I said, for those that manage more of a perspective of, you know, I know I need 100 hours in this job versus 50 hours in this task, you can use that functionality. And obviously, you can always export out a quick report as needed. Now, the other option you can do to see if you're ready for payroll is the payroll summary screen. Now, all approvers on this phone call are urged to use this screen to their advantage. And the payroll summary screen is easily accessed by going off the main menu or even from the top screen of this particular little header bar up here and actually clicking on payroll. And that's the little icon with the $sign on it. And once you go into the payroll icon, it'll actually open up this little screen for you. And you can now go to this payroll summary screen. And this payroll summary screen gives you a little bit of information. This payroll screen allows you to do a couple things. First thing you're going to notice is you will see some grouped items. And these grouped items in the middle of the screen and is located under the payroll, the payroll name here. And underneath this column, if you look straight down, you'll see a couple of them that are labeled as groups. Now, the groups are essentially just groups that are created that are basically put together to create ease for you. So pay groups are typically tagged together in one big larger group. That way you can kind of see your summaries over to the far right side. But when you expand those out, you can see the individual pay group names and individual readies, not readies, total employees, etc. As needed. So furthermore, also, the way this would work is when you go to the payroll summary screen, you always go to the top of the screen, put in your date range for the pay period. And when you type in your date range there, you hit search. The system will then return all the different pay groups that are available for you. Now, some of the things that can key off an approver right off the bat are the little notes on the far left-hand column. So on the far left-hand column, it's a little covered up here, but you'll have a few of these that say submit all. And you have one here that has nothing, it's just blank there. So if they're saying submit all there, that's basically your acknowledgement, or you should actually figure out that there's something wrong with that grouping. That grouping, if it says submit all, that means that there are a lot of records out there that still need to be submitted. So to that particular point, you click on submit all and actually get them all submitted. Typically, as an approver, obviously you won't be able to do that. You'll have to get on the phone call and tell with your submitters and say, hey, what's going on? Why are these still open? They need to be submitted ASAP so I can proceed with my next piece of the puzzle, per se. So submit alls, that will kind of give you a heads up of what's going on. But in all cases, the most important piece to take away from this screen, and this is one that's often overlooked, and I unfortunately have to say that, but approvers, if you look on the right-hand side, right-hand column, you have a status column. Each one of these gives you a red line that says not ready for payroll. If I see any of these that have not ready for payroll followed by a number in parentheses like the ones I've circled, that is your cue that you have issues. If they have there's a number in there for not ready for payroll, that's letting you know that that number of employees will not get processed come the next step. So even though everyone else has been approved, even though everyone has been submitted in here, for some reason those 3 employees are not ready for payroll. Typically it's because they haven't been submitted. Typically it's not because they haven't been approved, or typically it's because they have open punches still. So when I go in from this screen, I have the ability now to actually click on, and actually what's first thing it's going to do, if I want to find out who those, for example, the one right here in the middle that I'm pointing an arrow to, that one has not ready for payroll too. So if I want to actually go in there and find out who are those 2 employees that are not ready for payroll, the first thing I'm going to do is just do like it shows on this screen. I'm actually going to go over here to the far left-hand side and actually click on the plus sign to expand that grouping that not ready is a part of. So when I say that, the first thing I'm going to do is actually come into the middle of the screen, expand my grouping here. You will see your pay group name. In this case, my pay group is X-IT-test, which is a test pay group I have set up in the system. And then once I have that actually exposed, I can actually click on my pay group, and then I'll actually be able to now click on my not ready for payroll link. And that'll actually allow me to click on that link and actually see who those 2 employees are that are not ready for payroll. From there, you can actually go back and actually see, what status they're in. You can actually go in there and see if you need to go and approve them or submit them or just fix some open punches. So that tells you a lot. If you ever get to this point and you see someone not ready, do not call corporate payroll and say proceed with payroll, because once they do pull that payroll in and export to the JDE, we can't go back and pull those extra not readies at a separate step. So make sure that all of your payrolls look just like this third line that say not ready. Everything looks perfect. Typically, not ready is going to show you the ready line is going to show you the number of employees you have ready to go, and that is another option where you can check off. If you know you have 50 employees in your pay group here, and all 50 are accounted for there, then you're good to go. You can kind of figure that out. Obviously, if you have 200 employees and you're only showing 10 ready for payroll, then you have a much larger problem at your hands there. So once again, just word of thumb here: don't fret if you ever see some of these not readies there. They're just telling you that you need to do some extra checks. Now, the other benefit of the status column is you have a waiting for export, and you also have exported. We really don't talk about these too much because it's something you can't control on your end. But if it says a waiting for export, that means that corporate payroll has already kicked off the export process and the transfer is currently occurring with this payroll. If it says exported, that means that it's completed and JD Edwards has received that many records over on the JD Edwards side. So you just kind of a validation steps, the last two there. So at any point, if I were to go back to the past and pick up an old pay group here, like for example, I'm using February dates from last year. If I went in there and pulled up dates for February, I would actually see, hopefully, exported numbers in there, nothing in the not ready, or awaiting, because it's already been gone and done. So very two good points here, and I think answers a couple of questions that are out there. Let me see some other questions I have up here. I'm going to address a couple of questions that I probably should have addressed a little while ago, but one of the questions that came through says if I try to add a task but was not able to do so. So this particular user is trying to zero out the record. So one of the questions that comes here is going away from the payroll readiness real quick. Try not to zero out a time card line. You should be able to select a task. The tasks that are available for that particular job will be quickly available for you when you hit the drop down on the actual time card or timesheet line. If that time card or timesheet's already been submitted or approved, you can't make those changes. So typically, a lot of times I get that question that, I can't make changes to it. Well, it's locked. You can't do that. Now, if it's still in the open state and nothing has not been submitted or approved, then you can still go in there and adjust the task. Just edit the time card, edit the timesheet, and just adjust the task. Now, adjusting the task is not going to count against you. It does affect the correction lag score, however, but it's not a time change. It's not a manual punch. It's just a simple fix. So for those issues where you have to change a task, a job, a work order on a record, it's perfectly normal. Just click on edit and adjust as needed. But please don't zero out the time card line and recreate it just for the sake of creating a line there. Don't do that. Just go back to the original line and edit it. So I have another similar question. I think it's very related to that same question I just mentioned. If an employee clocks out instead of clocking in, it essentially pretty much created a record, an extra record possibly there. In those cases, if it creates a different record, maybe you have 2 outs, for example. Maybe you have 2 out punches recorded on the line, and 2 different time card lines. In that case, it's acceptable to zero out one of those and then just fix the first one or fix one of the lines to make it correct. So that's perfectly fine. Okay, so one question came up is why is it sometimes an open punch still gets submitted and approved? Well, typically an open punch, if you click on open punch, one of the things I can recommend is if you're ever at this screen as an approver or even as a submitter or an editor and you ever see an open punch and you click on that screen, it's going to take you, click on that link, it's going to take you to the time card window. In that time card window, you have the ability to see all your time card entries. But sometimes when you click on, for example, if I were to click on the open punch, and let me circle one of these right here, just to get a point across. If I want to circle this one right here, and I click on that one open punch, sometimes the system will take me over to a screen that's blank. And you'll be taken over the time card screen, you'll see nothing there. One of the points on the time card screen, and one of the options you have on the time card screen is to show all punches, or show punches with allocation, or, which I'm going to recommend here, is show all open and 0 punches. When you click on open and 0 punches, that will show you everything. Sometimes when you click on an open punch is really any punch has an issue, where an employee maybe clocked in but didn't clock out, or vice versa, didn't clock in but did clock out, or possibly situations where you've manually gone in there and zeroed out the time, and that's a big one around the company. Where someone goes in there and puts the out time to match the in time just to get a 0 time. When in reality, that is not the correct way to do that. And we've stressed on other webinars, that's not the way to do that. So that creates a 0 punch sitting in the system. So to that point, that creates an open punch as well. So all these cases, to best see them, if you go through, you can always change that view on the time card screen to say show open and 0 punches. And I'd like to do that on a daily basis with my team because I check punches here for my team, but I would do that just to see any issues of punching in and punching out. But typically, if you go through the process and The system will let you submit and approve records and jobs with those open punches in there, but keep in mind, open punches is not a good thing because open punches do not get paid out. They're just punches that have issues there and aren't going anywhere. So open punches is not a good thing. Just keep that in mind. So just to recap, this screen is the approver's lifeline because it allows you now to go through and kind of see where you're at, if you're ready for payroll or not. You can run it for a specific date range, and that's exactly what you want to do. You want to make it for the time frame of your pay period. But bottom line, kind of looking through the other steps here, summary of hours and dollars by rate type shows you the number of employees that are not ready, and that's the big one to take away from this. And then obviously you have the ability to submit all or approve all from that screen. So one of the things that we show, and it's the ePay team here would be myself, Tiandra, Jade, or Beth. We always show you from a perspective of submitting individually, submitting by individual job, or by approving by job. So one of the things I recommend from that perspective is that you can actually go into the timesheet screen, and actually from that particular screen, you can actually go through there, from payroll summary screen, go through there and actually approve or submit all from one click of a button from that view if you needed to. All right, and the last one I want to talk about before we go into the how to take care of those anomalies. One of the last things I'll show you here is a payroll register report. So as an approver, the payroll register report will give you the opportunity to pick a date range. It'll allow you to then also go in there and select specific pay group you want to run for. But bottom line, once I go in and generate this report, the system is actually going to provide me a payroll register report where I can actually see all the employees, all the hours that they accumulated, what their total pay was, what their current status is, if they're ready or not ready for payroll. So as a final check, and this is the one that I would tell everyone as an approver right now, be sure to run it. This report will show you total hours, so you quickly see that Josefina Nunez on my first report here, first line here, is going to get paid for 8 hours. Now hopefully that is correct. If not, then we've got other issues. But it gives you a kind of quick summary, gives you a quick pay, and approvers can only run this because obviously most approvers have access to pay rates. This is the report that's actually going to show you the total pay. It won't show you the actual pay rate, but obviously you can probably do some math or kind of get an average rate out of that. And you can also see the status. If it's not ready for payroll, then that should let you know that there are other issues still going on, that this is not going to process correctly. So just FYI, it's a good report to run, so you have there. So payroll register, just real quick, always run by the approver prior to approving or prior to even telling the corporate payroll that you are done. It's a key step in the whole process. If the process there says if it says not ready for payroll, then you need to go back and fix that. Remember, not ready is not good. And then obviously it provides hours and dollars to be paid. So once again, this is gross pay. It's just straight time, hours times your dollar as far as pay rate goes. It gives you a total dollar and end of story. JD Edwards is what compiles any deductions, any garnishments, etc. Okay. The last 3 points I want to point out here is the export column, because this report is key here in noticing which items or which employees are exportable and not. If you look on the far right-hand column, far two right-hand columns, one of them is called export employee, and the other one is called is active. Now, if they are an active employee with time, they're going to get over to JDE without any problems. If they are inactive, then you're going to have an issue. So that system's going to let you know. We're going to make sure they're all set to yes on this report. If there's anybody with no that has time, then that's because someone has prematurely terminated them over in JD Edwards, and that came over to Blueforce as termination as well. The export employee, this second column from the right there, all of them just say yes if you want that time to be exported to Blueforce. On the employee record, there's a setting that says is exportable, and if it's checked, it's a yes. If it's not checked, then it's a no. And any employee that's not set to be exported will not get over to Blueforce. So just make a side note on that as well. All right. So what happens when I forget? Maybe I forgot employees. What's the ramifications if I don't put time into the system? Well, you have this thing called Interim Hours. There's a metric on the ePay compliance dashboard that's not part of our scoring system as of this moment, but this gives you a look at what percentage of your interim hours, total hours are interim hours. Right now, our company is running at about a 0.3% total hours is being done after the fact or as interim hours. Unfortunately, this is unacceptable. Our target is to be a 0.25%, which is a 1/4%, or lower. So you can actually see this on your individual ePay compliance dashboards around the country. It also affects your monthly labor forecast metric because it misstates the revenue. For example, here, for this particular company, showing that I'm making a profit of $167,342 for my fixed and square footage jobs this month. However, if I run this report and don't include time that I missed, then obviously this revenue is going to be misstated. So the big question becomes is how do I handle my payroll adjustments? We've talked about how to prevent or what I can do to check items before payroll, but what happens if I still miss an employee, or what happens if I don't pay an employee quite the amount that I'm supposed to paying them? Well, any situation like this is then handled only through a manual timesheet. And a manual timesheet is not the same as your regular timesheet. So one of the key things to keep in mind is all adjustments have to be handled in Blueforce via this manual timesheet process. Do not call corporate payroll. Do not call your, any contact here at the office here in San Antonio, Texas. Bottom line, if you want that employee to get paid for that missed time, it has to be entered in the system as a manual timesheet. Now, this includes any situation like interims, but basically any unpaid hour situation. Even if you forgot vacation pay, maybe you were supposed to get paid vacation last week and you forgot them. You need to pick it up this week, then you do it as a manual timesheet. And once again, like I said, they're handled separately from your regular timesheets. Manuals will never show up alongside the regular timesheets. So I'm going to show you the view that I've been talking about today is your regular timesheet view. There is a separate link to access the manual timesheets, and I'll share that with you momentarily. But everyone on this phone call has the ability to go back up to 2 prior pay periods to enter missed pay into your manual timesheet. If it's greater than that period, then you might have to intervene with our corporate payroll group to get some assistance on getting that payment back to the employee. The biggest mistake I will say when using the manual timesheet is that the submitting and approving a timesheet before all the interim situations are compiled. What that basically means is once I get a report of a missed pay situation and I go and enter in a manual timesheet and I get that submitted and approved, that manual timesheet is locked and done with. You don't get another manual timesheet to enter for that particular job. And once again, it's by job and for that particular pay period that you missed. So typically the biggest mistake that happens is you rush, you get one employee fixed, and then lo and behold, you realize that 5 or 6 other employees have that same issue, and now you're in a little situation that you cannot go back in there and create more manual timesheets. So I'll address that a little bit more in the call again, but once again, wait to analyze how big the situation was. Was there more than one employee? Was it really just one employee having an issue? And then submit and approve it to get that those employees paid. Now, how do how do I handle the payroll adjustments? So if it's during a current pay period, if the period is still active right now and we're, punching in, punching out still for the current pay period and we have not submitted that payroll yet or approved it, for example, if the current pay period has not been approved, there is no need to create a manual timesheet because any hours that reflect the dates with the open period are still valid. So, if the current open period is January 2nd to January 8th in my scenario here, and the employee has 16 hours due for him or her on the 4th and 5th, then just go to the 4th and 5th as an open period and enter those hours. There's no need to go and create a manual timesheet. Although, yeah, the dates have passed, that's perfectly fine, but that period is still open. So please go ahead and just treat it on your current regular timesheet. Now, if the prior pay period has already been approved, meaning that we've already approved it, we're done with it, corporate payroll has already taken that payroll and has exported it over into JDE, then in that case, for my example here of January 2nd to the 8th, if it's already been closed and the employees are still due those 16 hours on the 4th and 5th, then the only thing I can do is go and create a manual timesheet for the 4th and the 5th and enter those 8 hours each day respectively for a total of 16 hours so that an employee can get paid for the vacation time that is due to them. Now, this is the only way to fix the employee at this point. At this point, is the only way to get that money to the employee. So do not contact your corporate payroll contact and ask them to do that another way, like importing or kind of taking some side road to assist you there, because that's not going to be acceptable. Now, keep in mind, let me go back to the screen real quick. If it's already been approved, those 16 hours that we're talking about in this particular issue, being the issue here, those 16 hours are not accounted for anywhere in the system until we process the manual timesheet. So keep in mind, your compliance metrics are going to be off. Your monthly labor forecast, obviously, definitely going to be off because you're going to be overstated in your revenue and understated on your labor. Possibly, and vacations PTO may or may not affect you, but regardless, you'll still be understated. But bottom line, it drives the point home that we have to make sure that the employees are punching in and punching out, and we have to catch these scenarios during payroll, not wait a week, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks after the fact. So one of the things to keep in mind is everyone on the phone call does not have access to JD Edwards, and if you do, your access is adjusted just to go through, and maybe for a view standpoint only. You don't have access to do any direct entry, time entry in the system anymore. So time entry is always going to be restricted for JD Edwards. So the only way to make sure that the employee gets paid is to go back into Blueforce and create this manual timesheet. And I cannot stress enough, do not call corporate payroll, do not inquire with them. They're going to drive you right back to Blueforce to have you key in that manual timesheet. So I've talked quite a bit about manual timesheets so far and kind of what you need to do and when to do it, but now how do you actually create that manual timesheet? So the manual timesheet is a simple process that gets kicked off from the timesheets module in the Blueforce, ePay Blueforce. So in that timesheets module, when I click on the timesheets icon shown there, looks like just a piece of white paper with some lines on it. It'll then take me to my timesheet screen that you're accustomed to seeing. Now, everyone, make a quick note. There are 2 links available for you on this screen. The first link, the very top, is Job Timesheets. And typically, when you go to the timesheets view, this view that's showing right here in the middle of the screen, this one is the regular timesheet view that I've been referring to. This is a view that you are always accustomed to seeing when you go to timesheets. This is going to show you for the current pay period. Now, on the left-hand side, you will see a link that I've actually circled. I'm circling now in blue. It kind of has a blue arrow pointed to it. That link is the manual timesheet, the very last link on the menu, and it's purposely left there at the very end so you don't get it confused with a regular timesheet. The manual timesheet basically says that you are manually entering time for an employee from a prior pay period. So that basically means if I missed that vacation hours back from January, or I missed an employee who was a new employee and just didn't punch in and punch out, and I overlooked it when it came down to payroll time for last pay period, I go into the manual timesheet, pick that pay period that I missed, and key in the hours to the proper dates. Now, it is important that if you do miss some hours from the past, that you go back and enter it to the appropriate date and to the right job, because once again, the dates and the jobs will correlate right back to the monthly labor forecast reporting that we have out there, the budgeting that we have out there, etc. So it comes full circle. ePay is well ingrained in everything we do going forward, so we have to make sure we account for that time accurately back even to when it actually occurred. So I'm going to go ahead and erase my drawings here. And let's go to the next slide here. So manual timesheet, once I click on that little blue link that's currently with a blue point by the blue arrow. It's going to take me to a similar window just like this. Now the way this works is kind of a step-by-step process. Step one, I'm going to go in and actually choose the job that I want to actually use for my manual timesheet. Now let me stress here, the jobs that are showing off the drop-down under point one here are going to be the jobs that I've selected to work with when I logged into Blueforce. So just like when I log in, typically it prompts me what jobs I want to work with. That's exactly what I'm going to be able to see here on the drop-down. So if I don't pick a job that I want to work with here for manual timesheet, then I won't see it on the drop-down list. Option 2 is there. 2 and 3 will then go, steps 2 and 3 there will be to go in and enter the date range of the missed hours. So the date from to the date to. So that whatever date range you're trying to enter time for. Keep it simple. Just put the days that you're trying to miss. Don't put the whole pay period. Just enter the days you're missing. And it'll help you in this process. Step 4, check mark the Show Blank Timesheets icon. And a question I always get here is, why are we focused on blank timesheets? We need time, don't we? Well, yeah, you do need time, but here's the kicker. The manual timesheets are going to be blank because there's no time in manually unless you go in there and enter it automatically. So if you go in there and manually enter some time, after that, the timesheet is no longer blank. But to get the process started, you're going to have to click on Show Blank Timesheets, and then lastly, click on the Search button. And when you click on Search, the system is actually going to pull up a listing of all the different timesheets that are blank right now. And if you look here, my examples here, the 2 timesheets that are pulled up are blank. You'll see no hours, no dollars, nothing associated to those timesheets. Now, once again, they are blank because obviously we're going back and creating a manual timesheet. The system is not going back and pulling off your regular timesheet. It's pulling off a blank timesheet that's going to be processed through a different queue with corporate payroll. So once I enter the date range at the very top of the screen, I did in my selection here. I did Alamo Cafe, and I did a date range of January 2nd to January the 8th, and then I hit search. And when I did that, it pulled up 2 records. And you know, there's 2 records, and they have the same pay group. Pay periods are different. Task says all tasks. There's no time on any of these. But why did I get 2 of those why did I get 2 timesheets that popped up? Well, the reason is because my date range that I'm trying to enter for, the 2nd to the 8th, actually encompasses 2 different pay periods. So in this example here, the first pay period ended on the 2nd of January. The second pay group actually started on the 3rd of January. So you'll see that your date selection at the top of the screen encompasses 2 pay groups. And if this happens, don't worry. Enter the time for the first pay group that you need to. Like, for example, the second will go in the first line, pointed with the red arrow, and the rest of the time will go in the second timesheet line. So the system knows what timesheets were created out there, what the date ranges were for them, so we have to keep that all in sync. So manual timesheets will appear for the job here. Verify that you have the correct timesheet. That's a big thing here. Don't enter time by accident on the wrong timesheet. And then click on the job link to actually select it. So in this case, I'm going to click on the job link on the first line to proceed for time that I want to enter between the period of the 27th and the 2nd. Now when I get in there, the system is going to show me an option to add new. I click on add new, and add new is going to provide me a new entry line. So the first screen, you're just pulling up the different timesheets that are available. The blank timesheets are available for your use. This screen, after you hit add new, is going to now provide you the opportunity to go in there and key in the line. Now the line looks very similar to a regular timesheet line, but it's actually a manual timesheet. Just keep that straight. It's a manual timesheet. So step 1, I put in the work date that was missed. So in this case, it was December 29th that was missed. So I'm going to go in there and put in December 29th date. I'm going to make sure that the job correlates to the job I have selected. And it's almost like a trap because the system here wants you to actually pick a job off the drop-down. But we've already told the system that this is a job that we want. That's why the job is already pre-filled for you. Now, if you go in here and change the job selection to something else, the system is testing you here. It wants to make sure you validate the right job. So if you make any changes to the job screen and it doesn't match the job line and it doesn't match your job that you're at selected at the top of the screen, then we're going to have an argument ensuing with ePay. So please just make sure you enter the right job from the get-go. Option 3 there, or step 3, is select the employee, hit the drop down, pick the employee you want to use. Keep in mind the employees that are available to you are only the employees that are assigned to work this particular job. Custodian or whatever task is needed will be option 4. Option 5 would be pick the work order. If there's a work order associated with this missed time, please, if there is indeed a work order, this should be actual labor that should have gone to a work order, please enter the correct work order. Only active work orders on the date of that work, the day of the day worked, are going to be available. So if a work order did not become available until January the 20th, and you're trying to enter time on December 27th, guess what? You're not going to be able to see that work order. And the last one is one of the fields that's always a good question field because it's called past pay date. Kind of a rule of thumb is make this a start date of the pay period you missed the hours for. It's kind of a funky field for ePay, but you'll find that if you enter that date and you save it and you proceed on and you add more lines, sometimes the system doesn't like that date. So kind of rule of thumb, if you use a date there for any time in that pay period, you're going to be fine. But typically, as a rule of thumb, start there with the start date of the pay period you missed the hours for. From there, you got 3 more fields to fill in off the far right. It's basically the regular rate type field. That right now is just basically is it regular pay? Is it overtime pay? Is it snow pay? What kind of pay is it? Hours, how many hours were missed? The rate, if you need to put a rate in there. Now, I would say leave it blank because the system's going to pull from their employee profile whatever default pay rate is. However, if this rate is going to be superseded because they did a special task and they're supposed to get paid like $12 an hour or some other specific rate, then you can key it in there. Other than that, you are done. Now, for those that have shift differentials or any union rules that pay different because of a certain time frame, you'll have to figure out those manually. This manual timesheet is really a dummy timesheet in the fact that you have to control all the entry. The system's not going to compile anything, it's not going to calculate anything for you. You have the actual control of doing this. So please enter the different items as needed here. And lastly, what you're going to do is you're going to go all the way back, scroll to the left-hand side of the screen. I think this is one of the things that a lot of the Blueforce users do miss. If I scroll back to the very far left-hand side of the line, there is a save and a cancel. If I click on save, it saves my entry. If I hit cancel, it forgets I ever was on this line and takes you back to the start of the process. So hit save, and then you'll get a confirmation message. Now, if you don't see this purple little message come up that says your timesheet has been entered successfully, then do it again, because I guarantee you that if you don't see this confirmation message, you did not do this, or you maybe hit cancel, or something else happened along the way. So this is your authentication message for everybody. Now, if you need to continue to add more timesheets, then you're just going to go back to the top of that the grid there and click on Add New. And when you hit Add New, you can just add away. If for some reason you miss a whole line of entry for 100 employees at one particular job, then you're in luck because there's no limit to how many timesheet lines you need, manual timesheet lines you can create. But keep in mind, you won't need to be doing this because you won't be creating any timesheets anyway. So all this discussion today on manual timesheets is really for nothing because we'll never have to create manual timesheets. So hopefully that's the norm going forward. Edit an existing timesheet if needed. You can always go back in there and edit a timesheet that's created, or delete one if you've actually created one too many or accidentally entered one that you shouldn't have. So you have the ability to adjust that. Now, just like your regular timesheets, once they're in the system, once you've gone in there and added your time, this time also has to be submitted and approved. So just like a regular timesheet, someone as a submitter, hopefully the submitter is the one entering this, will have to go in here, submit that time. The approver will have to come into the manual timesheet area and approve this time as well. So keep that in mind. 2 big steps that have to be complete. Once you've gone in there and submitted and approved it, the approver is going to go the same process. They're going to contact corporate payroll. Typically it's done via email. Just notify them that the manual timesheet is ready. And this becomes very important that you actually contact corporate payroll because they are not consistently looking at this queue, and it is a different queue from the regular timesheet. So keep them on their toes, contact them, let them know that there is something out there. Now, they may require you to send via email a special paycheck request form kind of as a backup for them. So that is a document that's available on Gateway, and or your contact for a corporate payroll contact can send that to you. But that is a document that should correspond with the hours you've added, kind of acknowledging that you're doing a special interim check after the fact. And then obviously, just kind of a recap, the payroll summary screens I talked about earlier, that's showing at the very top of the screen. That's by clicking on the payroll icon. And when you go on that payroll icon, that actually takes you, and you'll see at the bottom of the list, you have that option for a manual payroll summary. So from that perspective, you still have the same utilities. It's kind of a different view, but you can go here and see, you know, which of your manual timesheets is complete in the fact that, you know, is it still an open state? Is it submitted? Is it approved? Has it been exported? You've got all that availability from the manual timesheet view as well. So it's called the manual payroll summary, also from the payroll window. One thing you can do here, and this is sometimes a quicker method, as I talked about earlier at the beginning of the call, you have the ability here to go and hit submit all. So you notice that one of the actions down here via this route is to go and hit submit all in one step. So if you're a submitter, you can go this route, hit submit all, and it'll submit everybody in one fell swoop. Now, kind of wrapping up this little section is obviously the approver. Once you're done with the approving, the approver has to do the same thing. They can go to that same step and approve all. By doing that as well, the approver always has the ability to reject a submitted timesheet. So if the approver sees something wrong and wants to submit it to correct it, or maybe we still, you know, forgot some time out there, the approver can then reject it here and make that timesheet kind of go back to a need changes status. And when you do that, you can then go in and select to reopen all as being your last option. And that reopens it, lets the submitter go in there, fix his or her changes. The submitter would then have to go in there and submit the timesheet one more time. And once they submit, then obviously we have to approve again as the approver. So a good example there is the approver making sure that everything is good to go. So last thing, as just a kind of recap, is once you've entered your manual timesheet, you've submitted and approved it, just make sure you contact your corporate payroll contact. Make sure that they are well aware that there is a timesheet out there in the queue, and then send that special paycheck request if you're asked to do that. Now, let me stress that corporate payroll has a cutoff on every day, and they want this done rather sooner rather than later. And I do believe it's 2 p.m. Central Time is the cutoff. So I know, keep that in mind for the West Coast folks on the call and the East Coast folks. They need that manual timesheet entered, ready to go, submitted and approved, and if they ask you for a special paycheck request, they need to have that in there by that cutoff time. Therefore, if you want that funding, that check to be funded and cut or hit direct deposit that same day. So they have some deadlines that you will work with your corporate contact to meet, but nevertheless, that is one of the big things to keep in mind. So as I mentioned a little while ago, if daily reviews are occurring, there should be no reason to have a manual timesheet being created. There really shouldn't be. If we're watching every day, if employees are punching in and punching out as they should be, we should never get to a point of having to do manual timesheets. Let's utilize Blueforce's functionality to help with shift differentials, holiday exceptions, etc., to prevent having to track info manually. Now, shift differentials and holiday exceptions, those will be some topics coming forward in future webinars, but those are things we've talked about individually as well as in group settings. Keep in mind, we have a lot of functionality to take care of some of those automated items that those items that come and creep up on us that can be easily automated in the system. So if you have any situation where an employee gets paid a certain rate for working a certain task, or works a certain holiday, gets a different pay rate, or works for a certain time of the day and gets an increase in pay because they work the night shift, stuff like that, please reach out to either myself, Tiandra, Beth, or Jade, and one of us will be able to assist you with that particular scenario set up in the system. But once again, we'll cover those topics in the future when we do some other future upcoming webinars. So just to close, just want to recap one more time. Support, if you have any questions or any concerns about anything you saw today, put a help desk ticket in for you, for us, and we'll get back in touch with you as soon as we can. But you'll do that via that link right there in the middle of the screen, or you can call the IT help desk at 210-495-6093, and a help desk ticket will be created for you. In closing, just want to say thank you for joining us today on our Manual Timesheets webinar. We'll have this same webinar again on Thursday, so pass that note on to the rest of your team members. And we'll catch you again next week on our next Mastering Blueforce, the weekly series webinar. Thanks again.